However, though, our objective is not to be told that we are this, but rather our objective is that it cannot be said that we are not this. The moment a Christian fails to be this, Satan's forces are going to use that against you. In today's world, it seems as if someone who takes a position against God's word is then held to the lowest possible standard. But the moment you take the position that the Bible is the Word of God, the moment in which you declare yourself to be a born-again evangelical Christian, you are then held to the highest possible standard. This is nothing new. It is the exact same situation that Paul was faced with the false teachers at Corinth. It seemed as though the false teachers could do no wrong, and Paul could do no right. For this reason, Paul understood that his being this thing was indispensable. Meaning, if he were not this thing, it was completely all over. And what in the world is it that needs to be able to describe any genuine Christian? It is the state of being commendable. The goal of every Christian has got to be that anyone be able to see us as being commendable. That word, commendable, it means worthy of praise. Worthy of praise. Now, obviously, no one is worthy of praise from God, but this is a kind of praiseworthiness that is relative to man. A Christian does not seek praise for his character, but he nevertheless does all that he can so that, even though he doesn't seek praise for his character, he strives to make it so that such praise would not be a lie. The goal of a Christian is not the presence of the positive, meaning everyone giving you applause and accolades, but rather the mere absence of the negative, that they cannot speak against you. Our goal is not to actually receive praise, but simply to avoid shame. Our goal is not monuments erected to us, but rather simply to be worthy of a defense against anyone who should slander us. In verse 11, Paul calls himself commendable. And Paul would agree. There is nothing commendable about calling yourself commendable. Christians don't go around asking for compliments. But even though we don't go around asking for compliments, we do seek to be complimentable. I think I just made up that word. The Christian is all about being commendable without ever necessarily actually being commended. All about being complimentable without ever necessarily getting complimented. Being praiseworthy without ever actually getting praised. A soldier does not seek a medal. He only seeks to be worthy of one. And there's a difference. In other words, Christians are all about going above and beyond the call of duty without anyone else ever even noticing that we did so. We do not seek a pat on the back. The only pat on the back we seek is from God. The job of a Christian is to make any slander against you look as foolish and misguided as you possibly can. Paul was accused of not being a genuine apostle of Jesus Christ. Now, to defend Paul's apostleship would have been a no-brainer. To defend Paul's apostleship would have been the easiest thing in the world to do. And yet, the Corinthians sure didn't do that. Instead, they were like the high schooler, the teenager at the high school who knows his friend to be a great guy. But the moment the cool kids all start picking on his friend, he joins in as well. Why? Because he wants to be cool with the cool kids. Just like that, the church at Corinth, they wanted to be liked by the cool crowd who mocked and slandered Paul. Today, to make fun of Christians and to make fun of Christianity, especially to make fun of a Christianity that actually stands for anything, it's the cool thing to do. Sometimes people who know better join in. Therefore, unfortunately, having to put Christians on the defensive. If Christians are going to be put on the defensive, then we at the very least have to be defensible. Verse 11, Paul writes, I am become a fool in glorying. Ye have compelled me. For I ought to have been commended of you. For in nothing am I behind the very chiefest apostles, though I be nothing. So, first he says that what he has been saying, his talking about himself, which he's been doing thus far in chapter 11 and much of chapter 10, he's saying here that what he's been saying is foolishness. But Paul says it's a foolishness that he is absolutely compelled to be giving because he has to. And the reason why he has to talk about himself and defend his own back is because the Corinthians do not have his back. Christians are not commendable because they wish to be commended, but simply so that they at least can be defended. The glory of God, that's the only thing that matters. But in the eyes of the world, the glory of God is directly linked to our own commendability. Or you might say, our defensibility. Just like how Paul's apostleship was linked to the authenticity of the true gospel of Christ, so also our credibility, meaning whether or not people ought to listen to our message, is linked to our commendability. In the following 6 verses, we find 3 character traits that made Paul commendable. These are 3 qualities that he possessed that made it so that he should have been commended or defended by the Corinthians. They should have had his back. Why? Because he's got these 3 qualities that he's about to talk about. And they are the 3 qualities of being faithful, sacrificial, and honest. Faithful, sacrificial, and honest. Verse 12 gives us clear indicators of Paul's apostleship, while at the same time giving us a quality that authenticates not just Paul or someone who happens to be one of the apostles, but the quality that authenticates any genuine servant of Christ. In verse 12, he writes, "Truly the signs of an apostle were wrought among you in all patience, in signs and wonders and mighty deeds." Signs and wonders and mighty deeds, such things were clear indicators of apostleship. Today, you and I, we're not claiming to be apostles. Therefore, because we're claiming no such thing, I hope, no one is looking for you and I to perform literal miracles. No one is going to say that you are a fraud because you cannot defy physics. But Paul, first, before mentioning signs and wonders, mentions something more foundational and more universal to Christianity than signs and wonders. He says that while a genuine apostle, would do miracles, what is even more important is that an apostle has this quality: patience. Paul spoke in the previous letter about how, 1 Corinthians, he spoke in 1 Corinthians about how if he had to choose between being miraculous or being sincere, he would choose sincere. He said that if you had to choose between tempted to just mention the miracles and leave it there. You want to know whether or not I am truly an apostle? Hello, I did miracles. The fact that he did not leave us at miracles only, the fact that he mentioned patience first, that tells us that to him, patience was just as important, if not more important, than the miracles. Let me put it to you like this. If people before whom I had done miracles nonetheless tried my patience, that would have been the end of my patience right there. But that would be wrong of me to think that the power of doing miracles would excuse me of the need for patience. Patience is the oxygen in the room that makes literally anything possible. Meaning nothing would be possible without it, is how I meant that. Not that patience makes anything possible, but that nothing would be possible without it. The only things that can be accomplished in life without any need for patience, well, that would be anything that would be 100% instant and 100% pain-free. That's not much. Our modern world, however, does seem to be eroding our need for patience. Modern technology can certainly give us what we want quickly. Things are becoming quicker and more convenient every single day. For example, how much time is spent on the average dinner that is made from scratch? Today, see, that has changed. Today, quality is sacrificed for efficiency. I have caught myself being impatient with 30 seconds left on the microwave. 30, 29, 28. Oh, come on, this thing is taking forever. And so it is with our relationships. And we apply our impatience toward one another. If you were Paul, would you have given up on Corinth by this point? But you see, impatience is the opposite of love. And impatience is the opposite of humility. In fact, impatience is pure arrogance. Impatience is selfishness. Impatience is pride. When Christians are slandered for believing the Bible, when we are called hateful, when we are called bigoted, when we are called ignorant, when we are called hypocrites, when we are called backward, when we are called weak, you do understand, of course, this is a trap. They are trying to get you to return in kind. No matter what vile things they say about us, the moment you hate them back, they win. Ladies and gentlemen, the enemies of Christianity who degrade us, they're doing one simple thing: testing our patience. That's what's being tested, our patience. The only way to beat them is for our patience to be stronger than their hatred, to be as patient with them as the day is long. The only way to beat them is to let them throw rotten eggs at us, and for you and I to take it, and to not throw anything back at them except the loving words of truth. And eventually, your patience will be commended. Your patience will eventually pay off before man and before God. The second quality, Paul says, made him commendable was that of being sacrificial. Life is all about choices. It is almost never possible to get one thing that you want without giving up something else that you want. In other words, I said a few minutes ago, nothing ever happens without patience. Nothing ever happens without sacrifice as well. There is no more clear and obvious example of this than the example that is right in front of us every single day, the example of money. You go without money that you want for something else that you want more than the money that you paid for it, right? I mean, that's every single transaction. You choose to go without money that you would have liked to keep for yourself, but you know what? You want that thing more than you want the money that you paid for it. So apparently, the false teachers accused Paul of treating the Corinthians in an inferior manner to other churches. Basically, in order to try to say, Paul doesn't really love you, but we do. And Paul replies to this in verse 13. by saying that the only way in which Paul treated them any different was that he sacrificed for them even more greatly than he did for other churches. Not because he loved them more than he loved other churches, but because they needed that sacrifice from him, and therefore he chose to give it. He chose to sacrifice more for them than he did for others because he saw they needed more from him than did others. Look at verse 13. For what is it wherein ye were inferior to other churches, except it be that I myself was not burdensome to you? Forgive me this wrong. Paul says that the only way in which he treated them different was by not giving them a bill. And he says sarcastically that if you call that inferior treatment, if you call that doing you wrong, well, oh my goodness, then forgive me for being such a bad guy. You see, love for others does not amount to much until it actually comes at a cost of choosing to lack love for yourself. We all love other people to a certain extent. That's easy. We all also do love ourselves. And because we love ourselves, we like to treat ourselves to things that we enjoy. You name it, whatever luxury you enjoy, a little bit of love for yourself, a little bit of wanting what you want for yourself is perfectly appropriate and acceptable. For example, Paul earned a reasonable degree of comfort, and that certainly would have come from a fair salary from the church at Corinth. But the thing, though, is this: being sacrificial means more than throwing the beggar a buck. Being sacrificial does not mean giving up something that you simply just, well, I wouldn't mind having that for myself, but okay, I'll give it up. Yeah, that's nice. That's not sacrificial. Being sacrificial does not mean giving up something that you kind of want. Being sacrificial means giving up something that you really, really want. That's being sacrificial. And why? Because as much as you do love yourself, and as much as you do want what you want for yourself, you love others and love God even more. Verse 14, behold, the third time I am ready to come to you, and I will not be burdensome to you, for I seek not yours, but you. For the children ought not to lay up for the parents, but parents for the children. If anyone were to doubt whether or not verse 13 was truly sarcasm, verse 14 proves it by boldly declaring that he will continue to do nothing differently. Sacrifice is the meaning of putting your money where your mouth is. You only love something as much as you are willing to suffer for it. Paul says, I seek not yours, but you. If anyone ever literally proved that I'm not after what's yours, but just you. If anyone proved that by their actions, it was the Apostle Paul here. The false teachers were obviously the complete opposite. And so therefore Paul had to go out of his way to make the contrast as vivid as he possibly could to show them that contrast. Now, it goes without saying that life only gives us so much to sacrifice. That's true. We only have so much money. We only have so much time. We only have so much strength. And it might not be possible for you to sacrifice for others what somebody else can sacrifice for others. But that's not the question. The question is this: whatever your sacrifice looks like, does sacrifice define you? That's the only question. Does sacrifice define you? Well, there is a title, my friends. There is a title that is absolutely, positively defined by sacrifice. Meaning, it is impossible to be even a remotely decent example of this. It's impossible to be even the tiniest bit this without mountains and mountains and mountains galore of pure sacrifice. And the title I speak of is parent. The word parent is synonymous with sacrifice. Parenthood is defined by selflessness and, if I may go back to the previous point, patience. Verse 14 says, "For the children ought not to lay up for the parents, but the parents for the children." To bring a child into this world and then raise that child, to do that is to live 100% for another human being. To be a mother or to be a father is to put the well-being of your child infinitely above your own. The desire of every parent is that their child live a better life than they had, and even more importantly, become an even better person than they ever were. Why do parents do this? Do parents do this because they seek recognition? Does a parent ever get repaid an inkling of what they give away? Last time I checked, the greatest parent in the whole world ain't going to get some $1 million check in the mail for all they sacrificed for their kids. They do it for the well-being of the children and for no other reason. Verse 15, "And I will very gladly spend and be spent for you, though the more abundantly I love you, the less I be loved." Yeah, I would say that often describes parenthood right there. What does Paul mean by gladly? Is it fun to sacrifice? Is it fun to exercise patience? He's not saying it's fun. What he means by gladly is this: it's worth it. It is worth it. The pain is bearable. What makes the pain bearable? Because of the satisfaction one takes in the worthwhileness of the endeavor. The worthwhileness of the endeavor brings with it a satisfaction that makes the pain bearable. He writes, "Though the more abundantly I love you, the less I be loved." When a child throws a temper tantrum and says to mom or dad, "I hate you," what keeps the parent from tossing the brat out into the street? What keeps you from doing that is that the love is so great that they are willing to be hated. They are willing to be patient with that. They are willing to make that sacrifice and willing to say, like Paul, "I will continue to do so." Verse 16, "But be it so, I did not burden you. Others will notice the sacrifices you make. The point not being that they will praise you, but simply that they cannot deny you are a good person, that you are commendable." And then the third quality that makes a Christian commendable is always being honest. If a Christian, suppose with me that a Christian were to be incredibly patient, and said Christian were to be incredibly sacrificial, would that matter if it could not absolutely be undeniably said that person is also honest? No, it wouldn't matter without that. The false teachers had a hard sell in trying to make Paul out to be a deceiver and a profiteer who was only using Corinth for financial gain. What made this such a hard sell was Paul's refusal to take money from Corinth. And so, in the false teachers' desperation, they apparently had devised a conspiracy theory, which was that Paul was planning on embezzling the collection that had been taken up for Jerusalem that he had spoken of back in chapters 8 and 9. Paul immediately pulls the rug out from underneath this absurdity, but not before first getting in a little jab of sarcasm. Writing in verse 16, "Being crafty, I caught you with guile," as if to say, "Ooh, it was all just a big plot." Verses 17 and 18, "Did I make a gain of you? Did any of them whom I sent unto you? I desired Titus, and with him I sent a brother. Did Titus make a gain of you? Walked we not in the same spirit? Walked we not in the same steps?" Paul then disarms this absurd concoction by pointing to a few simple truths. Number one, Paul could not have acted alone because the collection was taken up not only by him, but also by Titus and other Christians who worked with the apostles, which was all spelled out back in chapter 8. It goes without saying that the more people who would have to be in on a plot, the less likely, the less plausible the plot becomes. Number two, not only had they always known Paul to be above reproach, but also all of these other men who are involved in this love offering were also all well known by the Corinthians to be men of excellent character. And so what we see in these verses is the importance of absolute honesty and transparency when it comes to anything ever involving money. Everything always has to be handled with lots and layers of accountability. Everything must always be done in the sunshine. Everything has to be above reproach and handled by only those with sterling reputations. Honesty means this. Honesty means that you don't ever act shady. Honesty means that you are an open book. An open book who's got nothing to hide. And that is exactly what Paul was. Paul went to great lengths to make himself as defensible as the day is long against any slander. That is called being commendable. And every single one of us ought to be striving for that same thing. To be defensible as the day is long, striving to be commendable. Not striving to be commended, but striving to be commendable. And Paul tells us in this passage, patience, sacrifice, and honesty. Those three things are three foundations of a commendable character. Tonight, do you strive to be that kind of a commendable Christian? As we stand to our feet, sing this hymn of invitation together, I invite you to come forward, kneel at this altar. If it is the